Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be exploring a really profound work. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's by Viktor Frankl. And in this book, Frankl was a psychiatrist. He recounts his experiences in Nazi concentration camps, and he shares how he and others found meaning. In the face of unimaginable suffering, we're going to be looking at excerpts from the book itself. We also had the insightful preface by Gordon W. Allport to help us along. So you might be thinking, how can anyone find meaning in such horrific circumstances? Yeah, that's kind of the question. And Frankl's observations about resilience and even humor within the camps may really surprise you. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. So Frankl used his experiences to develop a form of psychotherapy called logotherapy. And it centers around this idea that our primary drive as humans is the will to meaning.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's a contrast to Freud's focus on neuroses stemming from our unconscious desires. Frankl's approach suggests that our struggles often arise from a lack of meaning and a sense of diminished responsibility in our lives.
Yeah, and Allport's preface really highlights this. He talks about how Frankl would ask his patients a very direct question: why do you not commit suicide? And their answers, even when things felt hopeless, they revealed those little sparks of meaning that they held on to. It's incredible. Frankl also talks about the last of human freedoms, which is the power to choose your attitude in any given situation.
Yeah, you think about that in the context of the concentration camps. It wasn't about controlling those horrific external circumstances. It was about controlling how they responded internally. Even in a place like Auschwitz, that inner freedom remained.
Wow. And the book takes us through the phases of a prisoner's psychological reaction to camp life.
Yeah.
So the first phase is that initial shock of arriving at Auschwitz.
Yeah, and Frankl describes that finger game selection process upon arrival. It was designed to dehumanize, and for many, it was the beginning of a process of emotional detachment.
Right. And then comes a phase of apathy, where prisoners adapted to the unimaginable horrors. Survival became the sole focus, and everything else seemed to fade away. Frankl tells this striking story about passing his childhood home on the train to Auschwitz. And his fellow prisoners simply couldn't understand why it would matter at that point. It's a powerful illustration of how apathy could take hold. And finally, there's the challenge of depersonalization. After liberation, it was a struggle for many to grasp freedom, to feel joy, and to reconnect with their humanity.
It's important to note, though, that these phases weren't inevitable for every prisoner. Some individuals, despite the horrific conditions, held on to their inner freedom and found meaning through acts of kindness, humor, or simply by clinging to hope.
That brings us to Frankl's concept of the relativity of suffering. He observed that even in Auschwitz, small joys or comparisons to those worse off could offer moments of relief. For example, he talks about the sense of relief when the train wasn't headed to Mauthausen, which was a camp known for its brutality, or being in a camp without a chimney, which symbolized the constant threat of death. Even envying those with slightly less brutal work assignments could offer a sliver of hope. And it makes you think, how do our perspectives shift depending on our circumstances? There's also this poignant story about Frankl finding a single page from the Hebrew prayer book, the Shema Yisrael, in the pocket of a coat he inherited.
It's such a powerful image, and it connects directly to one of the core ideas of logotherapy. Meaning can be found even in the midst of suffering. It's not about avoiding pain, but about discovering purpose within it.
Frankl also introduced the concept of the existential vacuum, which is that feeling of emptiness and meaninglessness that can lead to boredom, depression, or even thoughts of suicide.
And he believed this feeling was particularly prevalent in the 20th century, potentially due to a shift away from traditional values and the overwhelming burden of choice in modern society.
So you're saying that even having too many choices can create a sense of emptiness. That's a really thought-provoking idea. Frankl also uses a term, mutagenic neuroses, to describe anxiety that isn't rooted in deep psychological issues, but rather in a feeling of lacking purpose in life.
And logotherapy aims to help people overcome this sense of meaninglessness. Frankl tells the story of an American diplomat who was unhappy in his career. His analyst kept trying to analyze it in Freudian terms, but it turned out he just needed a career change to find fulfillment. Sometimes the solutions aren't as complex as we think.
Yeah, it really highlights how important it is for our work to align with our values. This actually leads us to another key concept from Frankl's work, tragic optimism.
Okay, tragic optimism. That sounds almost like a contradiction. How can you be optimistic in the face of tragedy? That's the intriguing part. It's not about denying the reality of suffering or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about recognizing that, even in the midst of tragedy, there's still potential for meaning and even joy.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to be happy or ignoring the negative.
Not at all. It's about acknowledging the difficult things, but not letting them control our lives.
Yeah.
Frankl actually outlines 3 key aspects of this tragic optimism that can help us navigate challenging situations.
I'm really curious to hear more. What are those 3 aspects?
Well, the first is what Frankl calls suffering courageously. It's about facing suffering directly, not trying to avoid it or pretend it's not there. But it's not about seeking out suffering either.
So it's more about acceptance, accepting that suffering is a part of life.
Exactly. Suffering is an inevitable part of life, and sometimes it's simply unavoidable. The key is how we choose to respond to it.
Frankl witnessed so much suffering in the camps. Did he ever talk about how he personally coped with it?
He did. He found meaning in his work as a psychiatrist, even in those horrific circumstances. He also found solace in small moments of beauty, like a glimpse of the sunset or a kind word from a fellow prisoner.
It's incredible how those tiny things can become so significant
Yeah.
when everything else has been stripped away.
Absolutely. And that leads us to the second aspect of tragic optimism, finding meaning in guilt. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, but Frankl believed that guilt, when dealt with in a healthy way, can actually be a source of growth.
How can feeling guilty possibly be a positive thing?
It's not about dwelling on guilt or letting it consume you. It's about acknowledging our mistakes, taking responsibility for our actions, and then using that experience to become better people.
So it's about learning from our past and not letting it define us.
Precisely. We can use those experiences, even the painful ones, to make better choices and shape our character.
This ties back to Frankl's emphasis on responsibility. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond.
Right. And the final aspect of tragic optimism focuses on death. Frankl doesn't shy away from the fact that we are all going to die someday. He actually sees it as a crucial element of what gives life meaning.
That's a powerful statement. How can the thought of our own mortality be a source of optimism?
Well, it's about recognizing that life is precious and finite. Knowing our time is limited can motivate us to live more fully, to appreciate each moment, and to make the most of the time we have.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. It's not about fearing death, but about letting it inspire us to live more meaningful lives.
Exactly, and that's the core of tragic optimism. It's not about ignoring the difficult parts of life, but about finding a way to embrace them, learn from them, and ultimately find deeper meaning in our existence.
This is all incredibly insightful, but how can we, the listeners, actually apply tragic optimism to our own lives?
That's the important question, isn't it? I think the first step is recognizing that we all face challenges and struggles. Life has its ups and downs, and that's perfectly normal.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in our suffering.
We are definitely not alone. We're all in this together, and that can be a source of comfort. Knowing we're not alone can give us the strength to face our challenges.
So step 1 is to acknowledge the struggle. What's next? How do we start cultivating that tragic optimism?
Well, it's about focusing on what we can control. Our attitude, our actions, and our choices.
Yeah.
Even in the most difficult situations, we always have a choice in how we respond.
That echoes Frankl's idea of the last of human freedoms, the power to choose our attitude.
Exactly. We may not have control over external events, but we always have control over our internal reactions. That choice is incredibly powerful.
So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? We should ask, what can I learn from this?
Mhm.
Or how can I grow from this experience?
That's a great way to reframe the situation. It's about shifting our perspective and finding a bit of meaning, even amidst pain.
And this is where those small joys that Frankl talked about can come in right. That cup of coffee, the beautiful sunset, a meaningful conversation.
Precisely, the small moments of beauty, connection, and gratitude can make a world of difference.
It's about finding those little glimmers of light in the darkness.
Beautifully put. And lastly, remember that finding meaning is an ongoing journey. It's not something we achieve once, and then it's done.
It's a lifelong process.
Exactly. There will be times when we feel lost, confused, and uncertain of our purpose. But it's during those times that it's even more crucial to keep searching, keep exploring, and keep asking those big questions about life.
So even when things feel hopeless, we should never stop searching for meaning.
Absolutely not. The search for meaning is what gives life its richness, depth, and ultimate purpose.
So even in those moments of despair, there's still a chance to find meaning.
There is. It might be hidden, it might be subtle, but it's there. We just have to be open to finding it.
Wow, this deep dive into man's search for meaning has been so powerful. Frankl's story and his ideas about logotherapy are truly inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of the human capacity for resilience and how crucial it is to find meaning, even when facing incredibly tough times.
Yeah, it really is remarkable, isn't it? Even in those horrific circumstances, people held on to their humanity, their dignity, their hope. It makes you think.
It does. It makes you question your own priorities and how you approach those everyday challenges. Like we can get so caught up in the small stuff. But Frankl's experiences really put things into perspective.
Right. It's a powerful reminder to focus on what truly matters. Our relationships, our values, our contributions to the world. Those are the things that give life meaning, no matter what our circumstances may be.
So it's not just about chasing happiness then.
That's a great point. Frankl actually argues that happiness shouldn't be our primary goal. It's a byproduct of living a meaningful life, of pursuing what we value and finding purpose in what we do.
So it's more about finding fulfillment than those fleeting moments of happiness.
Exactly. And that fulfillment can come from different sources: our work, our relationships, our creative passions, our contributions to our communities. It's about finding what truly resonates with each of us and letting that guide our choices.
So it sounds like logotherapy empowers individuals to take control of their lives and to find their own unique sense of meaning.
That's a great way to put it. Logotherapy isn't about giving a one-size-fits-all answer to the meaning of life. It's about guiding individuals to discover their own unique path and purpose.
So it's a very personalized approach.
Absolutely. It recognizes each person's unique situation, challenges, and aspirations. It's about working together to help them find a way forward.
What do you think Frankl would say to someone who's feeling lost and hopeless right now?
I believe he would encourage them to look for meaning in the present moment, even in the smallest of things. Maybe it's a simple act of kindness, appreciating the beauty of nature, or reconnecting with a loved one.
It's about those little glimmers of hope, even in the midst of despair, right?
Precisely. And he'd remind them they're not alone in this. We all face challenges, we all experience suffering, and we all have the potential to find meaning and purpose in our lives.
It's a message of resilience, hope, and the strength of the human spirit.
It truly is. And that message continues to resonate with people worldwide, even decades after Man's Search for Meaning was first published.
This deep dive has given me a whole new perspective on how to approach life's challenges and find meaning even amidst suffering.
It's been wonderful exploring these ideas with you. Frankl's work is a testament to the power of the human spirit, to find meaning, even in the most difficult circumstances.
And to all our listeners out there, we want to leave you with this. If Viktor Frankl could find meaning in a concentration camp, just imagine what you can find in your own life. Embrace the challenges, find those sparks of hope, and never stop searching for that unique meaning. That makes your life worth living. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.